Hi and welcome, Sarah here. I'm super excited to show you this project today and I can't wait to show you the results at the end. This air dry clay project came as a bit of a happy accident when I made some of my other air dry clay projects, and I've developed a nice little technique which lets you print directly onto the air dry clay. Well, sort of anyway, and I'll show you how. It's so easy. Air dry clay is such a forgiving and versatile medium to use, and I really hope you'll love it just as much as I do and join in all different projects I have on here too. For this air dry clay project, the first thing I did was create the image that I want to transfer onto the clay. And so for this I'm going with the bee theme, and I'm simply just sketching out a nice little detailed bee, and I'm going to scan this into the computer. I will put the link in the description below so you can print this out also if you want to, or you could do absolutely any design of your choice or choose an image from the internet. I have scanned my bee in and added some text. It's really important that you flip any text like this and print it in reverse. And then I've done some different designs on here that you can use, and we want to print this out at the absolute best quality that you can, so you get as much ink on the paper as you can. My first copy you can see is a little grey, and the next one is very black, so I personally wanted to use the black one so I can transfer as much of that ink as possible to the clay. You could go for something lighter though if you want to, or you can choose a colour and just experiment and have fun, just enjoy it. So here we have our clay again. We need to give it a good knead as I did just before, and then we're going to roll it out to a nice disc shape, fairly thick, to approximately 1/4 of an inch in thickness. I work on a tile so that it's a nice smooth surface. This pattern transfer method for clay is absolutely brilliant if you want to duplicate the image many times. And let's just get a cookie cutter of any size or something that you can cut around and make sure that your design fits within that space. Cut the design out and just check it fits. I'm going to use it about this size. I would like it maybe a little bit bigger, but that's the largest cookie cutter I have, so you could use a shape and cut around that shape. And now, very importantly, I have some water here, just a really small dot of water. So I've just placed my finger in the water and now I'm smoothing this all over the surface. And I shall do that again, and I just want to get a really even amount of water. It's not really water, it is water. We're not wetting the surface, it's just ever so damp. And so for this size of clay, I have just dipped my finger in the water 3 times and I'm smoothing it over so we have exactly the same amount of water across the whole surface of the clay. And now we take our design and we turn it over face down, and we're going to ever so lightly press on that paper. We're not pressing it in, we're just gently making sure that the whole of the surface is in contact with the clay. I should have said earlier, I have printed here on some normal white copy paper, some just normal paper, and on an inkjet printer. I leave this to sit there for just 2 minutes. Now that I've left that there for 2 minutes, we can have a quick look at the results. Take the edge of the paper and just gently see if we have an image, and we do. See how the image is transferred over. If you see a little patch which maybe hasn't transferred, you can put the paper right back, but only if you haven't pulled the whole paper off, and just give it another gentle rub there. And if you can see, wow, it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I love this little bee. There's hi honey. So sweet, and I think the results for this are amazing. And just think of all the different things you could transfer onto your clay. Now this works for me with my printer and my paper. I'm not guaranteeing it works for you, but just give it a go and see what happens. So now I'm cutting mine out with my cookie cutter very gently here, and I'm going to make it into a little coaster, this one. And just watch to the end so we'll see how we're going to finish them off at the end and some other little techniques that I'll show you in a few minutes. Take a little bit of water on your finger or a brush and smooth all the edges nice and neat. Just making sure you get none of your image wet. You can use a little tool or a knife on the underside, and then I just leave mine to dry on that tile, and I'll give this one maybe 2 days or more to dry, just sitting there on the tile as it's fairly thick. Just make sure you dry it nice and slowly so that it doesn't warp and it doesn't crack. I have an air dry clay video all about the durability of air dry clay and how to prevent cracking, and you can take a look at that as well if you like. We're going to make a second little item here, so again we're going to roll our clay out to maybe about 1/4 of an inch thickness and larger in size this time, and I have a round object that I'm simply going to cut around. Make it nice and smooth. I should have used my bigger rolling pin, but never mind. So I'm going to cut round this tin. I've got a really sharp knife and I'm simply using that to cut around. As you can see, we hardly use any of the air dry clay for these projects, and so if you buy a kilogram packet, it really will last you for quite a few different projects, and it's a really economical way to make lovely craft items, lovely gifts, and I'm sure you will enjoy it too. For this item, I just want to make sure my edges are all nice and neat before I begin. And I've got the bigger printed out high honey and the small little bees, and we're going to do exactly as we did before, just add a really thin film of water, which is barely there, just a nice even amount right across, and I'm going to add these little bees as a little pattern on the bottom half, and then add the high honey in there too, and it's going to be ever so sweet, I'm sure. Again, we're pressing really gently, really lightly, just to make sure all of the ink is in contact with the clay. And then we leave it for the 2 minutes. And then we can come back to it as we have now and really gently remove, and there we have our pattern. Sometimes you might like a nice faded look like this one. I used the slightly less ink on the paper, and so you just got a really nice soft grey and you get a lovely pattern there. And I'm sure you could think of all different things that you would like to print onto your clay and all different uses for it. And so with this one I'm going to make it into a little air dry clay dish, and we are going to just place this into a bowl. I've put cling film into the bowl to make sure it doesn't stick. Place it in there really nice and neatly. You could do yours any shape you like. You could do a square, a rectangle, you could leave it flat, and it's really looking pretty already. So I'm going to leave these to dry. This one might take a few days to dry because it's fairly thick and it's got that cling film underneath. I recommend that you take a leftover piece of clay, roll it out and put some of the printed image onto that as well, and we'll use this little scrap piece as a test for the glaze at the end. And I just wanted to show you this little piece here for the importance of letting them dry really slowly, because this one I speeded up the drying time and look how it's curved and it's warped, because the air dry clay contracted too quickly and it's made it warp, and that's no good as a coaster. We cannot use that as a coaster. So this one is on the thinner side, and that also makes it warp easier. So with the one we did just now, we've made that quite thick. And I have another one here which I did for just the outline, and so you could use this technique to just outline some of your pieces and then you could go in and paint them. And I've done a little one with wording here, so you could also do that with some words. You can see with this one the paper actually stuck to the clay. That's where, if you have too much water lying on the surface, the paper will start to attach itself to the clay, and that's happened there. But if you want a rustic look, then fair enough. And so, as I say, if you want to use it as an outline, I have a gorgeous silver pen here, and I'm simply going to outline and use my printed on section as an outline and a guide, and how beautiful is that? It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. I wouldn't be able to draw that just freehand confidently and easily on there, and so with the guide you can, and it's amazing the results. These have been drying now for a few days, and I think you'll agree with me, they're absolutely beautiful and will make lovely gifts and look beautiful in your home. So take some light sandpaper and sand out any imperfections. You can always leave a rough surface like this for a nice stone effect. Take a soft cloth and make sure you get rid of all of the dust before you add any paint or any varnish. You can now add some colour at this stage if you want to, but I'm just going to take some black acrylic paint and I'm just going to darken up my lettering. So I'm going to take a nice fine paintbrush and paint over those letters because they didn't come out quite as dark as I hoped. And this is a really good demonstration for how you can use your transfer as a guide for all your painting. I love how this looks, and now onto the top coat. First thing you need to do is take the scrap piece that you did and experiment. Take whichever glaze or varnish you wish to use. Do a test on this one and make sure that the ink stays put. It should do, mine do. I'm just going to use a spray lacquer on mine. There are different options available, and so you can check those out. When using a spray like this, it's far better to do 2 or 3 light coats rather than one thick layer. As I said earlier, I discovered this technique as a nice happy accident when I did one of my other projects. I printed out some of the templates onto some paper that had already been printed onto on the other side, and when I cut them out to put onto the clay, the imprint from the underside went onto the clay, so I thought I can do something with this, and so here it is, and I hope you do give it a go too. It's such a fun and easy air dry clay project. Enjoy!